Today's episode of the Bill Simmons Podcast on the Ringer Podcast Network brought to you by ZipRecruiter. 80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. Their powerful technology distributes your job to dozens and dozens of the web's leading job boards, then identifies the right people with the right experience and invites them to apply to your job. My listeners can try it for free. You know where? ZipRecruiter.com/BS. Meanwhile, Belvedere Vodka, the world's finest all-natural vodka produced in one of the world's longest-running distilleries, crafted by a collective of master distillers. Belvedere, made with non-GMO Polish rye, pure water, no additives. Recognized for quality, ISC World Vodka Producer of the Year, 15, 16, and 17 this decade. Enjoy a delicious cocktail with Belvedere Vodka today. Remember to always drink responsibly. If you missed my column about Anthony Davis on TheRinger.com, it went up on Friday. If you missed all of our awesome Oscars coverage and our post-game show, you can get that on Twitter. The Sunday Night Post-Game Show with Fantasy Dobbins, Ryan Greenwald. Also available on the Watch podcast. And don't forget about One Shining Podcast this week, the March Madness. I call it the March Madness. It's coming up. And if you want to know who to pick, go with the dudes we had on Friday's podcast, Tate and Titus. They told you Michigan was a sleeper. Michigan won the boring Big Ten tournament. Congrats, Tate.
I'm proud.
You did it.
Yeah, we did it. Go blue.
Hang your head high.
Hail to the victors.
We're not going to talk about fish sex movies today.
Thank God.
We are going to talk about some smart internet stuff. But first, in memoriam, Pearl Jam. It's a boring time of the year right now. We're a week away from Madness. We just had the Oscars. Basketball, we're about 2 weeks away from award discussion. Hockey, next month. Baseball hasn't really kicked in yet. We're going to talk about internet culture. Charlie Warzel from BuzzFeed.
Hey there.
We've circled this podcast for a while.
Yeah.
How long have you been writing for BuzzFeed?
Almost 5 years exactly.
And your job has evolved over that time. And over the last 18 months, I think you have one of the most interesting jobs of any writer right now with the stuff you're covering. Not just some of the biggest companies we have, not in America, but in the world, but also like the impact that it's having on day-to-day society is genuinely frightening. You wrote a piece, I think, 2 weeks ago about the information apocalypse.
Yeah.
And by a guy who had warned us about the fake news phenomenon. And this guy is basically like, things are really bad. Nobody understands how bad they are right now and where this is going. But we are in a true danger point. When you publish something like that, does it come and go? Do people read it for a day and then they move on to another thing? Like, do people realize the impact of that piece?
So that one was actually, I mean, it's really an outlier, like really and truly surprising in terms of, I usually feel writing for 5 years for like an internet-centric publication, I have a good sense usually of how something's going to travel and the impact it's going to have. And this was, I thought it was really interesting. This guy scared the shit out of me.
Explain
when I
it.
talked to him.
Give the 30-second synopsis of what he said.
So this researcher, he's an MIT grad, incredibly smart guy named Aviv Ovadiah. He is has worked for some of the tech companies in Silicon Valley. He had he quit his job about 4 months before the election because he was just sort of noticing that like the incentive structure of the internet, it basically rewards sensationalism. There's no real checks and balances to these companies to make sure they're not, allowing people like, say, I don't know, Russia to, advertise on the platform and try to influence the outcome of an election. He sort of saw this stuff in a very vague way. And since he's in Silicon Valley, he's plugged in, was talking to people, and he said, holy shit. And so he actually gave...
So when he has the holy shit moment, where does he go? Who does he talk to?
He started talking to some like research institutions. He talked to Columbia University. He's doing some work at the University of Michigan. But mostly he was trying to talk to the people at the companies, at Facebook, at Yahoo, YouTube, Google. And he gave a couple of presentations in Silicon Valley. One of them was in October before the election. And he called it the Infocalypse, the information apocalypse.
Great name.
Yeah.
Not as good as Carmageddon, which we had out here, which I thought was a great title, but that one's good too.
Decent portmanteau. And so he he gave this presentation, and it was sort of like, these guys were like, yeah, it's interesting. There's no real hard science behind it. It's a gut feeling, like, good name. And yeah, sorry. And so,
would you like a free meal at our giant cafeteria?
Right, exactly.
See you later.
And so he was, he was pretty dismayed by that. And then obviously the election happened, and he basically said that, 3, 4, 5 days after, he started to get people calling him up and saying, hey, this is going on. We believe you now. And so I met him probably, I don't know, a year after that or close to. And the first conversation we had, I always sort of ask people, what keeps you up at night?
Yeah.
Because I just think that, people are usually very guarded when they answer that. And he just like out the gates just started saying all these things, started talking about these terms that he was coining. Like, one of them is called like automated laser phishing, which is basically like, instead of getting those like crappy, phishing emails or Nigerian prince email scams, it's like an AI generated scam. It's like an email that's coming not just from someone who looks like it might be your mom or your brother or your sister, but it's coming with information from them that's pertinent to the conversations you've had.
My mom and my wife have almost gotten nailed by this a couple times now. It's really getting more and more sinister.
And imagine if, so say it was with you, it took all the information from all the columns you've ever written, all of your tweets, all of those things, and basically put it into a learning algorithm.
Yeah.
And then spit out information. So it's talking like you. It's, it's sending an email to Tate about something that was, in your guys' email.
Tate would know. Tate's too smart. You can't fool Tate. He's from Carolina.
And so, it's just basically like what he was saying is, you think it's bad now. This is, we're in the first inning here.
Right. Well, I've noticed people have been writing about what's happening in porn.
Yes.
Not to go blue.
Yeah.
But there's this whole genre of porn that's emerging, and it's really only been the last few months where I think they even have a name. It's like fake.
It's called deep fakes.
Deep fakes.
Yeah.
And so it's like, here's Scarlett Johansson. She's finally did a sex tape, but
Right.
they figured out how to digitally put her face on somebody else.
Yeah.
And it looks like her. And this is like the creepiest thing that's ever happened.
Yeah. So there's a sort of like a maxim on the internet, which is that like all technology kind of starts, like all the great technological innovations of the internet start with porn.
Right.
And then sort of like bleed in everything else.
Move everywhere else.
So that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, there's these, it's a subreddit that Reddit has gotten rid of now, called deepfakes. And it's basically,
Oh, thanks, Reddit. Yeah. Thanks for getting rid of that.
but they have a non-porn one, which is just called something else fakes. I don't know what the name is, but like where people are they're putting Nicolas Cage's face on every like old movie star. So like,
right.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, Terminator clips with Nicolas Cage's face.
Yeah.
And it's fun and it's interesting. But like when you kind of zoom out back on that, you're like, oh, any dipshit with $80 and, a decent processor and 2 hours of spare time to learn this can do that. I went on YouTube and I watched a tutorial. I mean, it's not point and click easy yet, but
Yeah.
it's like anyone who wants to can start to do this. And the whole nature of, artificial intelligence and it's like machine learning stuff is basically that it's going to get better, faster and faster, exponentially.
Well, and the fear is, I mean, it's a fear now, but like, you could put anybody's face on a porn and stuff like that. But eventually we're going to get to a point where you can take the audio of somebody or, you could even hack into their email with audio or hack into their Twitter or hack into anything. And you could do it with somebody who has real power and pretend that they're saying something that they never said, which, with the worst case scenario of this would be we end up in a nuclear war because of something that was a deep fake.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and also like the thing that's really scary about this for Monday morning is the combination of all of this different stuff. So you have the audio manipulation. So I can say manipulate. It sounds like, your wife is leaving you a voicemail that's like very urgent that needs you to, I don't know, send money or do Venmo
come to
me
this
something.
place. Come here in 10 minutes, and you go there, and 5 guys are waiting for you, and they rob you.
And it's just sort of how all these things piggyback off themselves, and that's the true sort of scary thing is all this happening in tandem. And then what it does, and what this guy Aviv was telling me, is it creates this thing that he's calling, again, he's very good at coining terms, reality apathy, which is basically like if your entire inbox is really high level, good spam, you can't differentiate between, an email from someone on your staff to, whatever, then you're just eventually going to stop checking your inbox because it's too hard,
Or we end up almost like the email version of Google Docs, where only people who have been approved to email you and have some sort of encrypted email account, those are the only emails you get, which is weird too, because that means you'd never be able to hear from anybody outside of your little bubble, and our bubbles would become even, more intense.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, and there are ways right now that people are thinking of, to encrypt things or like digitally watermark something really good. Like that's sort of what a lot of people who are into like the Bitcoin crypto like space think they can use that technology to do that, to authenticate. But it's also what's striking is you talk to some of these people out there who seem like they should be the experts, and they're like, "Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know what we're gonna do." It's like, holy shit, like we really are with a lot of this technology just making it up on the fly, and that's great for innovation. But it's like we're seeing what this is doing.
Well, and there's no criminal ramifications really at this point, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's no law being written. It's not like the administration we have right now, not to get too political, but it's not like Trump's going to be like, I got this, guys.
Right.
Like I was looking today. So we're taping this Monday morning, and there was a story that Brian Windhorst wrote on ESPN.com about the NBA and about how Adam Silver is proactively trying to figure out how to help high school basketball. Like, this is now a crisis. I see it. The AAU culture is messed up. College basketball, that culture is messed up. Nobody likes the one and done. It's rampant cheating, and we're doing a disservice to guys who are eventually going to come into our league and might have 15-year careers and are going to have or be assets for us. We have to get involved now. We have to get involved at the high school level. I mean, he's laying out the blueprint for complete change with how we know basketball. I don't see anybody in our government even having the wherewithal or the foresight to do. I'm not just talking about Trump. I'm talking about anybody. Democrats, like who is people always complain about the Republicans and Trump and all that stuff, but it's not like the Democrats have emerged, like these great voices have emerged on that side either. Who is going to be the voices that fight for this stuff?
I mean, it's really hard. That story that we initially talked about, I went to Washington as like the first stop in that story.
Yeah.
Didn't end up using anything because the meetings that I had with people were just sort of like, oh yeah, we're thinking about it. There's no real, I think like the State Department just announced there's like going to be a cybersecurity initiative thing, but it's very vague. It's very
It would
weird.
seem like a cyber department would be the single most important department this country could have at this point, other than Homeland Security.
It's really wild when you talk to people. Not only is there just like the bureaucracy element of Washington, but there's just like this idea that it's not even on their radars. And I think we kind of saw a little of that. A lot of the senators, like Google, Facebook, and Twitter came in front of Congress in October and had to testify about all the Russia stuff. And I mean, they were awful, but you had a lot of senators you could just see were working through like the very basics of this and like really hung up on like Russia advertising on Facebook. And it's like, okay, they spent, I don't know, $180,000 or something.
Yeah.
Complete drop in the bucket. The real problem is all the stuff that's, not coming from a state government. It's all of the other like morass of information and crap. And so what I saw there was sort of like, you have a lot of people who are trying to come to terms with this, but we're sort of in this in-between sort of generation of a lot of lawmakers right now that sort of like maybe didn't grow up with the internet necessarily, and they're like trying to understand this, but we really need people who are like, Trump doesn't use the internet, I was thinking about this sort of, the other day. That should be sort of not trying to be political about this at all, just as a statement of fact. The leader of the free world should know how to use the internet, probably. That just seems like a qualification that makes sense to me.
It seems like for anything to get fixed, changed, solved, anything, we're going to need the power brokers in this country to get together. Like, I think a very